You are Locked On Wolves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
T-Wolves rally back from 18 down, but come up short in overtime versus the Rockets. Final score tonight, 117-111. What's going on? Back on the left, back at it. Another T-Wolves POSTCAST episode right here on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. Your team every day. Jack Borman with me as always. Give him a follow at JRBorman13. Plenty to break down tonight, including quick updated look at the tournament standings. They're not pretty tonight. And plus, we got to talk about Rob Dillingham's career bust-out night. But first, quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by Game Time. Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. All right, man, Wolves coming in, back-to-back losses, as you know, to Toronto, then to Boston, both on the road. You get a day of rest to kind of regroup. You're back at home for the next four, which is really nice. And plus, obviously, tonight, back at it with the in-season tournament play. Tonight was a must-win versus the Rockets. They were 2-0 in the standings coming in. Jack, they were down as many as 18 in this one. They scratch and claw their way back, really thanks to Rob Dillingham. I mean, he was the real catalyst in the fourth quarter, finally kind of busting out of that shell, going off for a career night. They had a 5-point lead with about a minute 30, call it 2 minutes and change left, but couldn't hold on. We go to overtime. Why don't you just start there? What happened in overtime? Did they just kind of run out of gas, or was there more to it? What did you see in OT?
Yeah, it just frankly looked like, the lack of being able to knock down a 3-point shot really was weighing on them down the stretch of the game. I thought, obviously we'll get to how they fought back, eventually have this 23-point swing that puts them up 5 with about 2 minutes left. Jaden McDaniels has a wide open corner three, go in and out on him, and Fred VanVleet comes down on the other end and makes a 3 of his own. So instead of an 8-point Wolves lead with under 2 minutes to play, your win percentage in those scenarios is probably north of a 95% in the NBA. It's now just a 2-point game and, coming back down the other way. And then, unfortunately, you have Rob Dillingham turn the ball over, and then Amin Thompson scores on the other end, and we go to overtime. And after Jaden McDaniels missed that 3, Timberwolves missed 4 straight 3-pointers while the Rockets went on, I believe, a 7-0 run to flip the script from being down 3 at the start of overtime, 105-102 to up 109-105, and the Wolves just couldn't buy a shot to get back into it. And at the end of the day, this game kind of ended where it started in terms of it just being, a make or miss game, right? And unfortunately for the Wolves, that they just weren't able to make enough shots in overtime. I thought that, their offensive process in the first couple minutes of overtime was totally fine up until Julius Randle had that just awful drive going right and had that really weird jumping, one-legged, whatever the heck that was short. And was just horrible offense. I really disagreed with Chris Finch closing with Julius Randle over Naz Reid tonight, and that felt like a political decision rather than a business and let's get a win decision, which is unfortunate. Unless something happened to Naz Reid and he wasn't able to finish the game, but we didn't hear anything about that. And so again, I totally understand everyone calling for Rob Dillingham to finish that game, to start overtime. Chris Finch went to Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I'm not listening to Chris Finch's post game right now because I'm here, but I'd imagine that he'll field a question about that, and I imagine that he'll talk about Dillingham had that costly turnover that led to a pick 6 to tie the game. And Fred VanVleet also just had wide open shot after wide open shot down the stretch of the fourth quarter with Dillingham and Edwards just getting nailed on screens from Şengün and Jabari Smith. So I think that was probably part of it. But again, you would have liked to have Dillingham to be able to handle the ball against the really strong defensive pressure on the perimeter in overtime from the Rockets. So just a bummer that they weren't able to pull it out because, man, the 25-30 minutes or so where Rob Dillingham had this place on fire was certainly as fun as it's been to watch a game at Target Center this year.
Yeah, and we'll get more nitpicky as the show goes on, but let's talk about the positive here for a second because, like you said, career night for Dillingham. 7 assists, 12 points, Jim P kept saying, Ant's got a quiet 25 at the time. He ends with 29, but Dillingham's got a loud 7 assists, 12 points, ends with a team high, plus 26 in the plus minus. That's got to be the one positive takeaway here, right? Like, we've seen flashes, but tonight, did we finally get to see what made him that top 10 pick and why they moved all the way up to go get him?
Absolutely. No question about it. I mean, just the way that he's able to electrify a game really reminds you of what Naz Reid is able to do. And it comes as no surprise that those two really took over this game with the energy factor. I think with Rob, it's not only, it's not only what he brings you on the floor, it's just kind of the manner in which he does it. I think the flair and the sizzle that he brings is so palpable.
It's electric.
It totally is. And I think that gives energy to your teammates. I think obviously production is production at the end of the day, but if you do it in a way that's a little bit flashier, a little bit more up-tempo, upbeat, gets the crowd into the game, it gets your teammates going. And that's why just all production isn't necessarily made equal. And Rob Dillingham, put that on full display tonight. I thought that, he really, and in my opinion too, he's just certainly the best backup point guard option that the Timberwolves have. And that's not a slight against Nickeil Alexander-Walker or Dante DiVincenzo. They're just not point guards. And that's okay. Before they made that trade, we're thinking, all right, Rob Dillingham's going to be the backup point guard. And Nickeil Alexander will kind of be that third guard that can, step in and play some point guard minutes if Mike Conley's out or Rob's really struggling. And, I think that part of the reason why I'm so encouraged by this loss is it really does feel like tonight was a turning point in how much Chris Finch and this coaching staff trusts Rob Dillingham with the ball in his hands. I mean, in the fourth quarter of this game, it felt like every single possession they had offensively outside of the one Dillingham turnover in the first half of the fourth quarter was a good one in that it created a good shot. The ball was moving. Dillingham was able to get past the first line of the defense and either, get into that floater range where he was tremendous and that floater range late in the game, made several great kick out passes, had that alley-oop to Rudy Gobert. I think it's just all the things you want from a lead ball handler. And, he's obviously bringing those things that Rudy Gobert wasn't able to bring. I think you like what Nickeil Alexander-Walker was able to do, scoring a little bit in pick and roll, being able to get downhill and finish with both hands inside. But just in terms of the pure playmaking and how much you trust a guard to be able to handle pressure, I think Dillingham is certainly right there. But for Dillingham, I mean, he started this whole thing. He had the Wolves were down 18, midway through the third quarter after Dylan Brooks makes his 4-3 of the night, is talking all sorts of trash. Fans are booing the team off the court. And what happens out of the timeout, the teams each miss a shot. And then Rob Dillingham comes down, makes that left corner three right in front of the Wolves bench. And, I think that, and I think that that just changed the energy in the entire building. And, they totally fed off of that. And then you had Naz hit a big three, have that steal, in the backcourt that leads to the Ant finish, and Ime Udoka is calling a timeout. And you're just saying, all right, we've got a whole new game. And I think a lot of the way that this team was able to rally and get out of that hole was because of the energy that Rob Dillingham infused into the game. And that's all you can ask for a young player coming off the bench. I thought that, it seems like with each, appearance he's had so far this season, he's gained a little bit of confidence. And you can tell that this coaching staff and Mike Conley on the bench, you see Rob Dillingham not in the game, go look at who he's sitting next to. He's sitting next to Mike Conley every time. And Mike Conley's giving him, all sorts of knowledge on, whatever he needs to work on in the game, what he's seeing out there. And that's just invaluable for a young kid like that. But you can tell that he's focusing a lot more on his playmaking than his scoring. And the last two games, it really feels like he's starting to learn how to kind of marry the two and pick his spots, one to be a scorer, one to be a playmaker. And I think that's only going to instill more confidence in him and his teammates. And really, I think lend trust to his teammates and saying, hey, like you need a bucket, I can go get you a bucket. You need me to get you in a position where you need to score, I can do that too. And I think the more that he understands the balance of that, the more that he plays, I think the more impactful he's going to be. And I think the coaching staff deserves a lot of credit. You look at a lot of the lineups that Rob Dillingham was out there tonight. He was playing alongside Nickeil Alexander-Walker to be able to insulate him a little bit defensively. And then you always had Naz Reid out there for the most part. And you had Rudy Gobert and Jaden McDaniels out there too, which I think is a perfect blend of, enough spacing around him that he can cook and he can kind of create in one-on-one situations, get past the first line of the defense, and then enough options to be able to help insulate him defensively as well. But I mean, you saw in the fourth quarter the way that he was fighting over some of those screens with Fred VanVleet as a ball handler, and then had that one play where he kind of snaked behind. I think he knocked the ball out of Şengün's hands, or maybe it was Dylan Brooks on the drive that led to a Rockets turnover and had everyone really into the game. So I think just for Rob Dillingham, when you look at the totality of what he did, he played 25 minutes. He was a team high plus 26 tonight, which was absolutely amazing to look at in a 6-point loss. It may not have felt like a plus 26, but I think the vibes in the building certainly felt like a plus 26 when Dillingham was on the floor. And in the fourth quarter, he was the leading scorer for the Timberwolves in the fourth quarter, had 7 points in the fourth quarter. Obviously had those two costly, turnovers. But again, I think, when you're looking at the course of the season, and let's say Rob Dillingham goes on to play really well for, the rest of the season, or at least has a much more sizable role for the rest of the season, I think you're going to look back at this game and say, I kind of remember that cup game on that bright lime green floor, which looks awesome in person. It's tough on TV, I know that, but it looks awesome here in person at Target Center.
I like it.
I think you'll look back at this game and think, okay, that was when things really started to click for Rob Dillingham.
Yeah, it's fun and exciting because we all know he's just scratching the surface. I love the fact that you called out he gets to soak up that ball of knowledge named Mike Conley as well for at least this entire year. And I think that's only going to help him exponentially, not just the physical tools, but the IQ stuff, right? Just the smarts of being such a young rookie. Not all rookies are built the same, dude. This guy is young and raw. Who's his game remind you of, by the way? I think I asked you this when they drafted him, but he is so explosive, the elite ball handling, so unique for his size and age. I know on the broadcast, Jim Pete flung out Rod Strickland, but who do you see in his game when he's out there balling like he was tonight?
He kind of reminds me of Allen Iverson.
Wow.
Growing up watching
he was
AI,
honestly, he was pretty good too. Like some people don't remember, he was
oh
actually pretty good.
And I think just the way in which he scores and gets to his spots and creates for others, I think. And Matthew brings up a good point in the comments saying that he should be starting. I agree with you.
Are we there?
I think he should be starting with the way we'll get into Dante DiVincenzo later, but
sure.
I mean, you just look at the Wolves bench tonight. They won 44-18. They absolutely, dominated the minutes in which Jock Landale was on the floor for Alperen Şengün in those bench minutes. And it comes as no surprise tonight that in a night where Rob Dillingham plays really well, the Timberwolves bench scored really, really well. We've been talking about for the last few games here, just that they haven't gotten enough production off the bench. If Naz Reid or Nah doesn't have a good game, they're just kind of SOL. And that was not the case tonight. For three guys to put up 44 points off the bench and all of them scored efficiently, I think that Rob has a lot to do with that. And if he can have a similar effect on the offense for the other starters, help get Jaden going, help get Ant going, maybe Julius going early in the game, I think that's certainly valuable.
Last one real quick on him. What is the dream? You said he should be starting, or he could be starting. Nobody should bat an eye. What's the dream look like in March and April in crunch time? Is he starting over Conley by then? Is it a 50-50 split? Like, is he that spark off the bench with Naz Reid? What's the ideal rotation when it comes to getting him the minutes, and who kind of shares the floor with him too in your ideal perfect world?
I think in an ideal perfect world, come March or April, you have a closing lineup of Rob Dillingham, Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid, and Rudy Gobert.
Okay.
Like I just think that's a good blend of being able to, and that's assuming that Ant and Jaden are really going to just defend their rear ends off on the perimeter, because Rob is going to give up points. It's just like, as much as he competes, I love the way he's competing defensively, but like, if you're playing against a team that's got like the smallest dude out there is 6'3", 6'4", like Rob, that's just a tough matchup, especially if that guard can post you up. Like if you're playing against the Mavs in a playoff series and like that's what you've got out there, like
that's tough.
Like they're going to hunt Rob for sure. And I think it's just going to be a matter of like, how well can you recover for him and kick him out and, be able to make things happen. And also too, like we can get into it later with Naz versus Julius. I just think Naz is a much better defender than Julius Randle. And I think that, what Julius would give you offensively, the positive there the negative of what he gives you defensively in a clutch time situation right now for me compared to Naz Reid is a much.
It doesn't outweigh the
much,
negative. Yeah,
correct.
the Julius positive doesn't outweigh
Correct.
the negative for sure. Plenty more
Correct.
deep dive from this one. Let's talk about DiVincenzo's struggles. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by FanDuel. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Right now, they're giving you a chance at a huge return, $150 in bonus bets, guaranteed with your first $5 wager win. When you get the hunch in the middle of the game, you can go check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. Again, $150 in bonus bets, guaranteed when your first $5 bet wins. Go check it all out over at FanDuel.com. Get in on some NBA future action while you're there. Anthony Edwards, MVP odds sitting at 10-1 now. Still feel like that's some good value. It's all sitting up over at FanDuel.com. Again, check it all out over at FanDuel.com and get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed with your first $5 wager win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, I know you're a big golf guy. We've all been there, man. You're walking up to that 4-foot putt, your knees start shaking, palms get a little sweaty. Is that what's going on with DiVincenzo right now? He's just got the yips, or is there more to it as far as like he's still finding his role here? It's almost like a completely new identity playing with so many new faces and skill sets and what have you. What's going on?
Yeah, man, it's hard to watch, frankly. I was so high on Dante DiVincenzo. I thought he was going to be a perfect fit in what the Timberwolves want to do. I still think that an optimized version of Dante DiVincenzo, like even 75% of the Dante DiVincenzo that we saw the second half of the season for the Knicks when Julius Randle was out with that shoulder injury, would have been perfect. And we saw it in the preseason where he was, in that read and react offense, was making perfect plays, was making quick decisions, was kind of giving them that off the ball shooter that can put it on the deck and kind of be a little bit of a secondary creator and finish inside and also be a competitive defender. Like all of that we saw just hasn't been there for most of the regular season, which I think makes the Cat trade tough to swallow. I think that some of what we're seeing from Julius Randle would be a little bit easier to stomach if Dante was playing really well, was making 3-pointers. Like Dante DiVincenzo was one of the 5 best shooters in the league last year. I think Dante DiVincenzo made like the 3rd most threes of any player in the NBA last season, and did so at an awesome clip, near 40%, or maybe even a little higher than 40%. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but it is baffling to me that not only are the shots not going in, they don't look particularly close. They don't look good coming off of his hand. And it looks like a guy who's just kind of second guessing everything that he's doing out there offensively right now. And I think that that's really tough for a guy that you expect to come in and, obviously need some time to get adjusted to this offense and learn his teammates a little bit. But the one thing that you really would have expected him to do at a high clip is just knock down open catch and shoot threes, right? That's something that you can do in any NBA offense and just space the floor and catch the ball, shoot it, make your threes. And that's just not happening. And that's a great point too, with this comment that you have up on screen, is that, I was talking to another media member before this game, just watching warm-ups courtside before the game, that like, I think you'd be able to live with Dante missing his threes right now if his defense was there at the same rate it was in the preseason, what we saw last season, and if he wasn't turning the ball over, being a more primary ball handler and initiator of the offense, and he's had some major struggles turning the ball over too. And obviously that's not all his fault. I think some of the turnover stuff would kind of fall in that category of like new team, needs time to figure some of the things out. He had a few games there where he really, seemingly had a good connection with Rudy Gobert, and that was super encouraging. And it just hasn't been there. And I think that's tough for a lot of people, like myself, who were pretty optimistic about the Wolves' returns in the Karl Anthony Towns trade. Yeah. And it just hasn't necessarily unfolded the way that it did in the very early part of the season, the preseason. And and I think fans tonight too really started to make their feelings known Not only just about DiVincenzo. I think that, they weren't necessarily booing DiVincenzo, but it's just kind of the audible groans, right?
Yeah.
Of
it's the new default now. Yeah.
Yeah. And you really felt a lot of that, but with Julius Randle, it felt a little more hostile, or a little bit more
personal. Yeah.
Maybe not personal, but just more frustrating. I think. I think that they see DiVincenzo is still trying really hard, and it's just not happening. And that's okay. Like, this is a really intelligent crowd at Target Center. I think,
for sure.
I think it's a crowd that really appreciates when their team plays hard. Like we talked about all year last year, like the Wolves would climb out of holes with defense, and they would just play extra hard. And that was super endearing to this fan base. And you could hear it clear and loud as day on TV when Rudy Gobert's making extra efforts, Jaden McDaniels fighting over screens, Naz Reid's coming up with loose balls, Mike Conley's diving on the floor, Ant's making, highlight plays. Like that has all been absent for the most part this season. And I think this crowd really is starting to see how little effort and intensity Julius Randle plays with on the defensive end of the floor. And when, I think that they're willing to give guys a pass offensively if the shots aren't there, if they're matching that with, high level effort. But I challenge everybody that's watching this right now. Pick any, if you're at a Timberwolves game this season, just watch Julius Randle for 3 or 4.
Just hone in on him. Just zone in.
Only watch Julius Randle.
Yeah.
Watch how little attention to detail he pays defensively. He doesn't fight hard over any type of screens. He doesn't really pay much attention when he's playing defense off the ball. He consistently jogs up the floor in transition. He doesn't sprint back up the floor in transition. He consistently gets beat for offensive rebounds. And what bugs me the most about that is that he battles his rear end off on the offensive glass. You saw that in the third and fourth quarter.
Yeah, it's in there.
There's zero if you don't have the best defensive awareness, you don't fight over screens, okay. You can hide some of that if you just play hard and battle on the glass. And that's been frustrating, I think, for fans to watch and for me to watch personally, because you see how hard Rudy Gobert, Naz Reid, Jaden McDaniels, Ant, all these guys are playing defensively. And then it all just, goes out the window because Randle doesn't want to rebound the ball. And I think, we've talked about on previous shows, I'm not going to relitigate it necessarily about what they're losing from Cat going to Randle, but
sure,
we all thought that would be a tough sell offensively. But it's really been more on the defensive end of the ball that it's been a problem, because Randle's defensive rebounding compared to what Carl gave them last year, I think has been pretty brutal.
How long until that causes some serious turmoil then in the locker room with the players that are giving full effort every single night in and night out? Now, I'm sure they gave both these guys a little buffer, like, you just got here, you're feeling everything out. This is how we do things. This is how it looks. There's some chemistry to build there. But at a certain point, it's like, dude, we're all watching the same film after every game. Yeah, that ain't going to cut it, man.
Totally. And throw up that comment from Dancing with Paper. That is exactly it. It is nothing that he can't do, because we've seen it from him in spurts. He just chooses not to do it consistently. And that's what's frustrating to me. It's one thing if you're asking a guy to do something he is athletically not capable of doing, Julius Randle's probably not capable of guarding Nikola Jokic because he's significantly shorter. And, when Jokic has you in the front of the paint, can just rise up over you. That's fine. I'm not going to complain about that, but I'm going to complain about effort, because it's an every night thing now from Julius Randle. And I got so many texts from people in New York, New Jersey that were like, all right, just wait until, fans start to see what Julius Randle does defensively. And you're starting to see that. And I think on nights when the offense isn't there, like the second quarter, you have 7 turnovers for 9 Rockets points in the second quarter alone. That's when the fans really started to realize it. When Randle's offense looks clunky and he's jumping, getting caught in the air on passes that become turnovers or these weird missed shots, and it just sucks the flow out of the offense. And then on the other end, you're compounding that by giving up easy points, not playing hard, getting beat on the offensive glass. That's when I think it really starts to, starts to boil over for fans.
For sure.
And that was, I think, a turning point. Like the Wolves have been terrible in the second quarter all year this year. They're like 23rd in the NBA. They have a net rating of about -7, and that's not including tonight's numbers.
Yeah.
But when it's just like when the offense is playing like that, your defense is fighting for your life. And we'll get into maybe, after the next break, a little bit of why Houston was able to be successful tonight. But like, man, it's tough when, Houston's just making all these shots and you need your offense to stick with it. And that's when, you're leaning on an offense that for, a decent part of the year has been a top 10 offense. You have all the pieces you need to be a top 10 offense. And then you have Randall kind of sucking the flow out of it and then compounding it on the other end is just, like I said, it's an intelligent fan base. They know what they're watching. They appreciate players who play really hard. And it just hasn't necessarily been there for Randall so far on the defensive end. And it's frustrating because, again, tonight we've been saying it all year. Like there's these teams like Houston, number 2 in offensive rebound percentage. Like you would think that you'd have a little bit more attention to detail in nights when you're playing teams that are just dying to crash the glass. But
during a small sample size, especially after a huge trade like that, so close to the beginning of the season, it's like, okay, there's going to be some ebbs and flows. Unfortunately now, 17-game sample size, pretty decent sample size now. He's clearly one of the common denominators here of why this team is struggling night in and night out, to your point. A couple minutes left. We got to talk about this Kings game tomorrow night real quick. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by BetterHelp. When your schedule, it's packed with work projects and more, it's so easy to let your priorities start to slip, even when we know what makes us happy. But when you feel like you got no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy, they're more important than ever. If you've been thinking about starting therapy, it's time to give BetterHelp a try. Entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited for your schedule. So simple. All you got to do, you fill out a brief questionnaire, you get matched up with a licensed therapist, and what's great, you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Go visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon. Get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Real quick here, you got the Kings up next. Obviously, just played a crazy OT thriller with them, a week or so ago. So we've seen already what they can do, but round 2 now, you got the rematch, plus the fact you're on a back-to-back coming off another OT game. So what's the biggest challenges, I guess, bouncing back so quickly, and what are you looking for from the T-Wolves? What do you want to see from them tomorrow night in this matchup specifically?
I want to see a third win of the year against the Sacramento Kings is what I'd like to see. DeMar DeRozan has been ruled out of this game with back soreness, I believe. He's kind of ramping back up after missing some time there. He's been up there in the leaders in the NBA for minutes played per game this season. So you have a guy like him that's going to be out. Malik Monk is back for them. He was out for a while with an injury, but he's back. And again, I just think, like, what am I looking for? Like, De'Aaron Fox had like 60 points the last time that these two teams played, and they just rolled out a red carpet into the paint. And I think that they've got to be more competitive up top. I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker is probably going to start tomorrow night, just because I think that they want to have him try to guard De'Aaron Fox, or because he's been more successful guarding quicker, twitchier guys on the perimeter than Jaden McDaniels has, dating back to when Nickeil arrived here a couple of years ago. So I think that's certainly number one. I want to see Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert do a better job of cleaning the glass. The Timberwolves, I mentioned this on a postcast a few weeks ago. Dane had a tweet about it, yesterday or today, that the Timberwolves are number 1 or number 2 in the league in defensive rebound percentage when Rudy Gobert is on the floor. Yeah. That's percentage of opponent missed shots that they come up with.
And then when Rudy worst in the league.
Exactly. So,
insane.
I want to see,
which is the biggest contrast and biggest split for one individual player in the league, is it not?
It's up there.
It's got to be up there.
It's up there. I don't know if it's number 1 necessarily, but I think. I just think you got to have Naz Reid and Rudy Gobert and Julius Randle all really rebound the ball, because Domantas Sabonis is a load to deal with. Alex Len can get in there and offensive rebound as well. So that's what I want to see. And again, like, your 3-point defense has to be better against a team that's going to get a lot of them up. between Monk and Fox and Herter and Keegan Murray. So they've got a lot of weapons offensively, and I think if they bring the same level of defensive fight that they brought the last 18 minutes or so, that'll be huge. And then again, Kings team whose bench I think this Timberwolves team can take full advantage of. Again, if you win 44-18 tonight against Houston, a team with 3 really solid bench players and Inman Thompson, who had 7 stocks tonight, kind of crazy for him. And then, Tari Eason, a really solid defensive player, and Reed Shepherd, and Rob Dillingham's teammate at Kentucky. Like, if you're able to slow that group down, I don't see why you shouldn't be able to slow down the Sacramento group tomorrow. They may have Jay Crowder. Shams tweeted today that he's close to signing with the Kings. Not sure if he's going to be in the lineup tomorrow. Okay. Maybe we see him sign and he's in the building tomorrow, but I don't know what he's going to give them. So that'll be something interesting to look at. But again, the 3-point battle is going to be really important. The Timberwolves are 0-7 when they make 13 or fewer threes this season. That includes tonight.
That's a crazy stat.
They were 9-7.
Yeah.
And then they're 8-2 when they do make 13 or more. So 24% on 38 shots from 3, just 9 of them. Houston 15 of 37, 41%. So they've got to clean that up. But a few other things too. While we're rattling off here, I would love to see Jaden McDaniels continue to corner crash offensively. I was going to
say, trying to find a positive here. I feel like we continue to come on here and give him some flowers for offensive rebounding, scoring. 2 things we've been banging the table for since he's been a starter in this lineup for a couple of years now.
Yeah, no question. I think too, when we saw Jaden McDaniels was really successful last season in that playoff series, I think it was especially against Denver. I'm horrible at remembering some of these things back then, but he was tremendous offensively at times against Phoenix and Denver, and that was really when he was at the height of his corner crashing. And when he's not necessarily getting the ball offensively, he's not coming off of those curl screens and putting the ball on the deck, getting into the mid range, and either getting all the way to the rim or making good corner kick and playmaking decisions. I think that's just another way that he can be involved offensively, because he's 7 feet and he's got wingspan for days. And especially too, like, if your 3-point shot's not falling too, like the way that he's able to get inside, grab offensive rebounds, put him back, talk a little trash to Dylan Brooks and Tari Eason. A Seattle guy for him going back. I think that's great. And that's stuff that the Timberwolves really need. And I think, again, not super worried about the 3-point shots not falling for Jaden McDaniels. We've seen him make so many of them. I think his teammates trust that that's a good shot. Chris Finch trusts that that's a good shot. Yeah. He's put in a ton of work on his 3-point jump shot over the last few summers. I trust that he's going to make those shots. I'm not too worked up about him missing shots tonight. But yeah, I just think the more things that he can kind of do to get his hands on the ball and stay involved offensively, even when his teammates aren't necessarily looking his way, like corner crashing, and trusting that Rob and Ant and Nikhil are going to get back in transition. And that's another area where, if Julius Randle's not getting back in transition on plays where Jaden McDaniels is in there fighting and trying to keep the ball alive, same goes for Rudy Gobert, like that's tough. I just think that you've got to have 3 guys try to get back with the way that the Timberwolves have struggled in transition. And if Julius Randle is on the floor, I think I would rather have Julius Randle try to get back in transition, because I feel like Jaden McDaniels is probably a better offensive rebounder in terms of, or I guess like it's a better option to have Jaden McDaniels corner crash and a guy who's probably a lot smaller than him, whereas Julius Randle's, probably seeing a guy that's a burlier 4, maybe a small 5 guarding him. So those guys aren't really going to be factors in transition necessarily anyways. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, tomorrow night, I think Timberwolves fans should be excited to turn on the TV. It'll be a fun up and down game. I think you'll see a lot more Rob Dillingham. Reports are from the locker room and post game that he was just exhausted, and that also factored into why he didn't play.
That's a good point. I'm glad you said that, because 38%, I'm gonna just guesstimate, of these comments are really, Pitchfork Nation out on Finch, which, hey, Finch deserves a little bit of the blame for sure, but Finch not having Dilly out there at the start of OT because, to your point, he was exhausted. It sounds like.
And
go ahead.
And look, I'm just going to say, like, if you want to blame Chris Finch, I said this to someone on Media Row while we're watching the game. Like, I think if you want to get mad at Chris Finch, I would 100% be more upset that Chris Finch didn't have Naz Reid in there at the end of the game over Julius Randle, over like the Dillingham thing. I think that I mean, I out of respect to Julius Randle, very nice guy. Don't want to just beat a dead horse.
Guy. Yeah, great guy.
Don't want to be disrespectful. I just think what Naz can give you defensively closes kind of that gap of Randall's net negative in terms of what he's bringing to the table late in the game. And that's not to say he's not a good player. That's not to say that at all. It's just at the end of the game, Anthony Edwards is going to have the ball a ton, and you need more guys that are going to knock down shots or be able to space the floor and, more importantly, play defense on the other end of the floor. And it's just the Wolves need more defense out there. And I think Naz Reid gives them a better chance to get stops than Julius Randle. It's just about that. But I will say, like, I love everyone is passionate. I think that's fantastic. That's the reason why we're able to do what we're able to do.
Yeah.
But I would just say respectfully, let's pump the brakes on Chris Finch. He is by far the best coach this franchise has ever had. He's been instrumental in completely changing the culture in this organization. Every single player swears by him. Every player that has played for Chris Finch that has left and come back has said, like, hey man, Chris Finch is awesome. And guys who have been in a ton of different places love Chris Finch. So like, if Mike Conley loves Chris Finch, if Rudy Gobert, Anthony Edwards, like all these dudes, Dante DiVincenzo, like guys who have played around the NBA love Chris Finch, like, I'm inclined to trust the players there. And you want to know what? Like,
agreed.
He is so much more of a net positive in terms of all the things that you don't see on the court with, keeping a locker room together, keeping morale high among the team, because he knows how to manage player relationships and he knows how to talk to guys and get the most out of guys, whether it's in practice or shoot around or before games or after games. Like, everybody here swears by him. Like, everybody too, who has nothing to do with the on-court product of basketball too, say that, like, who Chris Finch is as a dude is so important in keeping everything, on the same page and everybody feeling like they're all a part of something that's greater than themselves. Like, I can attest too, like from the times that I have, like, interacted with Chris Finch and people have interacted, like, he's awesome. So, like, I understand that you're frustrated about what happened tonight or how the Timberwolves have started, but, like, in terms of the blame pie, if we want to play blame pie, like, Chris Finch is getting so little of my blame pie.
Sliver frankly. Of that pumpkin pie this Thanksgiving, like, just the smallest sliver, you're saying.
I don't know. And if people want to get mad at me for that's totally fine. Like, take your frustrations out on me. But I promise you, like, I really think
he's
that
not
Chris
the issue.
Finch
There's a fundamental issue going on, and it ain't Chris. It ain't Coach Finch.
If you want to have, like, is Chris Finch like the solution over here or the problem over here? I think Chris Finch is, like, all the way over here. Okay, or damn close to it. So.
Great stuff, man. Maybe your best show. I'm not going to lie to you. Wolves run out of gas in OT. Final score tonight, 117-111. Officially dead in the tournament standings. Losers of 3 in a row. They dropped to 8-9, but some positives to take out from this game and go on to the Kings game tomorrow. As always, huge shout out to all the everydayers out there that always make us your first listen, and all you guys coming in the chat, venting with us from game to game. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Go follow all of Jack's work on X at JRBorman13. Again, Wolves Kings tomorrow night, another 7 p.m. tip-off. Catch you right here, same time, same place. But until then, signing out.